She said, "Hi." I thought, wow, this is incredible. I stammered back, "Wow, hi." Then with a knowing smile, she added, "Hi, Michael." In an instant, everything I thought I knew about the stars of Hollywood changed. The tale of Al Pacino, a legendary figure who once ruled the screen, has taken a shocking and tragic turn, one that few could ever have predicted. From the iconic roles that defined a generation to an all-consuming financial nightmare, Al Pacino's life took a devastating nosedive. In a matter of hours, the Godfather star went from living the dream to losing everything. His trusted financial advisor stole $50 million, leaving him penniless. And to this day, the 84-year-old actor is paying a staggering $400,000 annually just to maintain the landscaping on properties he no longer owns. Meanwhile, his relationship with a much younger girlfriend, who ironically dates other men, only adds salt to the wound. As if that weren't enough, Pacino has been forced to accept humiliating roles in a desperate bid to stay afloat. It doesn't stop there. Pacino, who was once so powerful on screen, actually died for several minutes during a recent medical emergency. Doctors fought to bring him back to life. It's a harsh reminder of how quickly life can change for even the most celebrated of icons. This is the untold, startling truth of Hollywood's golden boy and his devastating fall from grace. Born Alfredo James Pacino on April 25, 1940, in East Harlem, New York City, Pacino's early life was shaped by hardship. His parents, Rose and Salvatore Pacino, both of Sicilian descent, split when he was just 2 years old. His father moved to California, leaving young Al and his mother to navigate life on their own in the South Bronx. It was a brutal reality for them, forcing them to move in with Pacino's grandparents, Kate and James Girardi, who took on the responsibility of raising him. His grandmother was the matriarch, a force of nature who kept the family together in the face of adversity. Growing up in the Bronx, life was a daily battle. Pacino found himself in trouble often, getting into fights, skipping school, and even stealing food when money ran low. As a child, he dreamt of becoming a baseball player, but as time went on, the world of film became his sanctuary. His mother would take him to the theater regularly, sparking a passion that would eventually consume him. By his teenage years, acting was no longer just a dream. It was his obsession. Despite his lack of academic focus, failing everything except English, Pacino's heart was set on the stage. At 17, he dropped out of high school, much to his mother's dismay. She wanted him to have a stable career, something that would guarantee a future. But Pacino was relentless. His family had been torn apart, and he refused to fall into the same trap. Arguments with his mother escalated, and eventually he left home, forced to fend for himself. The next few years were a blur of grueling jobs, anything to make ends meet. He worked as a messenger, janitor, busboy, and postal clerk. There were nights when he had nowhere to go, sleeping on the streets or crashing on friends' couches. Along the way, Pacino fell in with the wrong crowd. By 9, he was smoking and drinking. By 13, he was using marijuana. The streets had a dangerous allure, and many of his closest friends succumbed to heroin addiction, with 3 dying from overdoses. But Pacino saw the abyss that lay ahead if he didn't get his act together. Determined not to follow that path, he threw himself into acting. Despite facing rejection after rejection at the actor's studio, Pacino didn't quit. Instead, he enrolled at the HB studio, where he met Charlie Elton, a mentor who would guide him through the darkest days of his early career. It was there that Pacino found the strength to rise above the odds, determined to make his mark in the world of acting. But little did anyone know, the road to fame and fortune would eventually come with an even steeper price. And though Pacino would go on to be one of the most revered actors of his time, the toll of his past and the relentless challenges of his present are a sobering reminder that the Hollywood dream isn't always as glamorous as it seems. Charlie Elton, the seasoned actor and teacher, became Al Pacino's guiding light. Under his mentorship, Pacino embraced method acting, a style that demanded a profound emotional commitment to every role. It was a grueling process, one that took its toll on his body and mind, but there was no turning back. Night after night, he honed his craft with relentless dedication. There were even times when money was so scarce that he slept in theaters, using the stage as his bed, rehearing lines as he lay there, determined to perfect every movement. But just as Pacino seemed to be getting a handle on his path, tragedy struck. In 1962, at the age of 23, Pacino lost his mother to a heroin overdose. She was only 43 years old. Less than a year later, his grandfather, who had been a strong and steady presence in his life, passed away as well. The weight of these losses was crushing. Pacino slipped into a deep depression, and at times, he was forced to sleep on the streets, borrowing money just to get by. Yet even as his world seemed to collapse, one thing remained untouched: his dream. He never gave up on acting, no matter how dark the days grew. In 1966, his perseverance finally paid off when he was accepted into the prestigious Actors Studio, a turning point in his career that would forever change the trajectory of his life. Under the tutelage of the legendary Lee Strasberg, Pacino learned to trust in himself and the power of his emotions. Strasberg's lessons weren't just about technique. They were about unlocking a depth of raw, authentic expression that would define Pacino's career for decades to come. But Hollywood success was still a distant dream. Pacino continued to struggle, barely getting by, when in 1968 he was cast in a small but significant role in the off-Broadway play The Indian Wants the Bronx. His performance was a revelation. Critics took notice and filmmakers began to pay attention. The role earned him an Obie Award, the first of many accolades, and finally, doors that had once seemed closed began to open. For Pacino, the realization came suddenly. All the rejection, all the sleepless nights, every street corner and cold bench had been leading him to this very moment. "I knew I was this vagabond kid," he later reflected. "But when the opportunity came, all I had to do was be there." His path, though riddled with hardship, had been the very thing that shaped him into the actor he was about to become. In 1969, Al Pacino made his film debut in Me, Natalie, a modest movie directed by Fred Coe. Pacino's role was brief, but it marked the start of his film career. At the time, he was still an unknown actor, living in Greenwich Village, immersed in theater, and still studying under Charlie Lelton. Although Me, Natalie wasn't a box office juggernaut, it earned $1.9 million in rentals in the US and Canada. Nothing to sneeze at for a small-budget film. More importantly, it was Pacino's first experience in front of a camera, a small but crucial step in his cinematic journey. But it wasn't until 1971 that Pacino truly began to make waves in Hollywood. His role in The Panic in Needle Park marked a major turning point. Directed by Jerry Schatzberg, this film took a brutally honest look at heroin addiction in New York City. Pacino played Bobby, a small-time hustler whose life spirals out of control, mirroring the devastation of addiction itself. His portrayal of Bobby was raw, vulnerable, and gripping. It wasn't about glorifying the lifestyle, it was about showing the harrowing, often destructive reality of addiction. While the film didn't set the box office on fire, it became a cult classic, with Pacino's performance hailed as one of the most authentic portrayals of drug addiction ever put on screen. Critics were captivated by his ability to make Bobby both deeply human and tragically flawed. He had become more than just a face. He had become a force of nature in cinema, a raw talent that demanded attention. Despite these early successes, the journey was far from over. Pacino had earned respect, but he had yet to achieve the fame that would make him an icon. He had fought for every opportunity, struggled through every setback, and survived unimaginable hardship. And now, Hollywood was starting to take notice of the man who would soon become one of its most powerful voices. As the Panic in Needle Park gained attention, it wasn't just Pacino's intense portrayal that stood out. It was also his raw, unfiltered energy that caught the eye of a director who would soon change his life forever. That director was Francis Ford Coppola. In 1972, Coppola was deep in the casting process for his upcoming film, The Godfather, and Paramount Pictures was pushing for a big name to play the role of Michael Corleone. Jack Nicholson and Robert Redford were both in the running, but Coppola saw something in Pacino that no one else did. The studio, however, wasn't convinced. They argued that Pacino was too short and lacked the star power to carry such a monumental role. The studio's pick? James Caan, an actor already familiar to them. But Coppola was undeterred. He believed Pacino had the perfect quiet intensity needed to transform Michael Corleone from a reluctant outsider into a cold-blooded mafia boss. Filming The Godfather was no easy feat. Early on, Pacino's performance was met with skepticism. Executives believed he wasn't giving enough. His portrayal seemed too passive, too restrained. There was even talk of replacing him, but Coppola wouldn't budge. He knew Pacino was the heart of the film, and he refused to let the studio dictate his vision. The turning point came during the restaurant assassination scene, the moment when Michael Corleone kills Sollozzo and McCluskey. The tension in that scene, the cold determination in Michael's eyes as he pulls the trigger, became the defining moment of Pacino's career. His controlled, calculated performance in that pivotal moment completely shifted the perception of his character, proving Coppola's instincts right. The studio finally saw what Coppola had seen all along. When The Godfather premiered on March 15, 1972, it was an instant classic. It didn't just make history, it redefined the genre. The film grossed over $250 million worldwide on a modest $6 million budget, and Pacino's performance as Michael Corleone became unforgettable. He earned his first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, alongside co-stars James Caan and Robert Duvall. While he didn't win the Oscar, the nomination was proof enough. Al Pacino was no longer just a stage actor. He had arrived in Hollywood. The success of The Godfather led Pacino straight into the sequel. The Godfather Part 2, 1974, would not only continue the story of Michael Corleone, but would delve deeper into his character. This time, Michael was no longer the innocent outsider. He had fully embraced his role as the head of the family. His journey into darkness was complete. Pacino's portrayal of a man consumed by power, ruthlessness, and isolation became one of the greatest acting performances of all time. The film won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Pacino earned a nomination for Best Actor, though the Oscar went to Art Carney. Still, Pacino's win at the BAFTA for Best Actor proved that his talent was being recognized on a global scale. Between the two Godfather films, Pacino's career continued to soar. In 1973, he starred in Serpico, a gritty and intense portrayal of Frank Serpico, the real-life NYPD officer who blew the whistle on corruption within the force. Directed by Sidney Lumet, Serpico showed Pacino in a completely different light. He was no longer playing a criminal. He was the crusader, fighting against a corrupt system. Pacino's performance was electric. His raw anger, frustration, and idealism felt palpable. Once again, critics took notice, and Pacino earned another Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Then came Dog Day Afternoon, 1975, another collaboration with director Sidney Lumet. In this film, Pacino played Sonny Wartzik, a desperate man who robs a bank to fund his partner's gender-affirming surgery. Based on a true story, the film's intense emotional core was rooted in Pacino's performance. One of the most memorable scenes in the film was improvised. Pacino, standing outside the bank, shouts, "Attica!" a reference to the infamous 1971 Attica prison riots. The raw, chaotic energy Pacino brought to the role made the film a critical and commercial success. Once again, Pacino earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, further cementing his status as one of Hollywood's brightest stars. At this point in his career, Pacino was no longer just a talented actor. He was a force in the industry, and his name was synonymous with cinematic excellence. But what truly stood out about Pacino was his relentless commitment to his craft, his willingness to take risks, and his ability to transform into every character he portrayed. Each role was a new challenge, and with every film, he proved that he was not just a star, but an artist, one who could delve deep into the human experience and bring it to life on the screen. By the early 1970s, Al Pacino was at the peak of his career. The Godfather, Serpico, and Dog Day Afternoon had solidified his reputation as one of the most respected actors in the world. He was no longer just a rising star, he was an icon. But as is often the case in Hollywood, the higher you climb, the farther you fall. By the late 1970s, Pacino's career began to unravel. His first major stumble came in 1977 with Bobby Deerfield, a romantic drama directed by Sidney Pollack. The film was intended to showcase a different side of Pacino, a softer, more vulnerable version of the actor. Instead, it became one of the most notorious failures of his career. Audiences found the pacing slow, the story unengaging, and many even walked out of screenings. The critics were merciless. One review dismissed it as DRE, a term for direct-to-video trash. Given that home video didn't even exist yet, this critique was particularly stinging. The film's failure marked the beginning of a rough patch for Pacino. Things didn't improve with Cruising, 1980, directed by William Friedkin. The film followed an undercover cop investigating a series of murders in New York's underground gay leather scene. From the outset, Cruising was plagued by controversy. Activists protested loudly during filming, disrupting shots with air horns, using mirrors to block the cameras, and making so much noise that much of the dialogue had to be re-recorded. The controversy only intensified when the film hit theaters, with many accusing it of being exploitative and offensive. Audiences were perplexed by the open-ended conclusion, and critics were equally unimpressed, calling it unfocused and confusing. Years later, Pacino himself admitted in his 2024 memoir Sonny Boy that he regretted doing the film and refused to promote it. By the early 80s, Pacino's career seemed to be in freefall, but just as it appeared the film industry had moved on from him, he made a stunning comeback. In 1983, Scarface was released, a violent, excessive film that was unlike anything Pacino had ever done before. The role of Tony Montana was a massive risk. Oliver Stone, who wrote the screenplay while battling his own cocaine addiction, imbued the character with a raw, unrelenting energy that matched the film's feverish intensity. Originally, Sidney Lumet was set to direct, but he left due to creative differences. In the end, Brian De Palma took the helm. At first, critics weren't impressed. They derided the film for being over the top, too violent, and too flamboyant. But Scarface was destined to become a cult classic. Audiences, particularly young viewers, connected with Tony Montana's rise and inevitable fall, seeing something in him that they couldn't resist. The film grossed $66 million worldwide against a $25 million budget, a solid return for a film that initially seemed destined for failure. Over time, Scarface would evolve into a cultural phenomenon, and Pacino's line, "Say hello to my little friend," became legendary. The film's influence seeped into the world of hip-hop, and it quickly became a staple of pop culture. Pacino had once again reminded the world why he was considered one of the finest actors of his generation. Just when it seemed like his career was back on track, another disaster struck. Revolution, 1985, a historical epic about the American Revolution, cost a whopping $28 million to make, but earned a paltry $358,574 at the box office. Critics lambasted the film, and Pacino's accent was widely mocked. The film's failure was so devastating that Pacino took a step back from Hollywood, retreating from the limelight for 4 long years. But Pacino wasn't finished yet. He returned to the screen in 1989 with Sea of Love, a solid hit that reminded audiences of his undeniable talent. However, it wasn't until 1992 that he had his true career-reviving comeback. Scent of a Woman, directed by Martin Brest, was a game-changer. In this film, Pacino portrayed Frank Slade, a blind, bitter former Army officer who forms an unlikely bond with a young student. The role was complex, demanding, and full of nuance. Slade was angry, unpredictable, and volatile, but he also had a certain charm that made him magnetic. Pacino's performance was nothing short of brilliant, earning him an Academy Award for Best Actor, a crowning achievement in a career that had seen its share of triumphs and setbacks. Al Pacino's role in Scent of a Woman marked a pivotal moment in his career, culminating in a breathtaking courtroom speech that stunned viewers. After years of Academy Award nominations, he finally won the Oscar for Best Actor, asserting his status in Hollywood. The film grossed $134.1 million worldwide against a $31 million budget and garnered multiple Golden Globes, further enhancing Pacino's prestige. However, as he entered his 70s, a dark chapter unfolded as he confronted a severe financial collapse, not due to his extravagant lifestyle, but a Ponzi scheme orchestrated by his trusted financial advisor, Kenneth Starr. Believing his wealth was secure, Pacino discovered too late that Starr had deceived him, leaving him with nothing by 2010. Despite Starr's conviction and prison sentence, Pacino's fortune was unrecoverable. Additionally, Pacino had been living beyond his means, spending excessively on lavish items and lifestyles that his earnings couldn't sustain. He incurred unreasonable expenses, including $400,000 annually for landscaping on an unoccupied house and payments for multiple cars and cell lines he didn't use. With no hands-on management of his finances, he was unaware of the considerable deductions from his earnings, which included taxes and fees, contributing to his financial downfall. Pacino's extravagant lifestyle, coupled with inadequate financial management, led to his financial downfall, forcing him to make quick career decisions. In 2011, he starred in the film Jack and Jill, directed by Dennis Dugan and featuring Adam Sandler. Despite grossing $149 million globally, the movie received a disastrous 3% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and Pacino garnered 2 Razzies for Worst Supporting Actor and Worst Screen Couple. Fans were puzzled by his involvement in such a film, but it was primarily a financial necessity. He earned $5 million, providing a temporary relief amidst his financial struggles. The film, despite the criticism, opened up new opportunities for Pacino, including commercial partnerships and additional roles. He began to recover financially, reflecting on his choices with candidness, admitting that while Jack and Jill was not his finest moment, he had no regrets and valued the collaboration with Sandler. In his personal life, Pacino became a father 4 times but never married. His first child, Julie Marie, was born in 1989, followed by twins Anton and Olivia in 2001. In 2023, at age 83, he welcomed his son Roman with girlfriend Noor Alfallah, who is 54 years his junior. Pacino's romantic history includes notable figures like Diane Keaton and Lucilla Polak. Al Pacino, despite his numerous high-profile romances, never embraced marriage, stating it didn't feel right for him. However, he cherished fatherhood, often struggling to balance it with his intense career demands. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, he acknowledged that he hadn't always given his twins the attention they deserved during their formative years. Reflecting on his life, he recounted experiences that resembled scenes from his films, including a perilous encounter in the 1970s that followed the rise of his fame from The Godfather. After a night of heavy drinking with Richard Hackman's brother, Pacino found himself in a precarious situation when a fan offered him a ride home. As he realized her sinister intention to kidnap him, his survival instincts kicked in. When she refused to stop the car, he contemplated jumping out until she sensed his fear and drove him back home instead. Pacino later connected this near miss to his tough upbringing in the South Bronx, where he learned to trust his instincts. Fast forward to 2020, Pacino faced another life-or-death moment when COVID-19 severely impacted him, causing him to lose consciousness. He was revived by a dedicated medical team, experiencing an ordeal that felt surreal, akin to a science fiction narrative. Al Pacino's near-death experience was starkly different from those of many survivors. He described it as a void, devoid of memories, sensation, or time, compelling him to reevaluate life, death, and the afterlife. After recovering, he vowed to prioritize his health and spend more time with his son, Roman, though the profound emptiness of his experience lingered. Prior to this, Pacino had long battled chronic insomnia, which plagued him for decades. His restless mind prevented him from getting adequate sleep, causing significant strain on his life and career. As he ascended to Hollywood stardom, the toll of his sleepless nights became apparent, affecting his mood, memory, and perception, at times leading to hallucinations. In 2002, he starred in the psychological thriller Insomnia, which resonated deeply with him as the character faced severe sleep deprivation. His struggles were exacerbated by career pressures and financial turmoil, including theft by a corrupt accountant. Despite attempts to cope, insomnia remained an inescapable part of his life. Pacino's career has also included controversies, such as his role in the 1980 film Cruising, which ignited public protests over its themes and portrayal of the gay community. On paper, Cruising appeared to be a promising crime drama, but its execution led to significant backlash from LGBTQ+ activists concerned about harmful stereotypes. During production, protests arose as demonstrators disrupted filming, vowing to protect their community's representation. Upon release, criticism intensified, labeling the film as exploitative and sensationalistic. Many viewers felt it exploited the struggles of the LGBTQ+ community instead of portraying them authentically. Even Al Pacino, who starred in the film, later expressed regret, acknowledging the challenges of addressing controversial topics in the industry. He donated his paycheck from Cruising anonymously to charity after witnessing the negative reception. Despite this setback, Pacino's career flourished as he learned from his experiences and continued to adapt through personal and professional struggles. His legacy, marked by iconic performances and overcoming personal demons, remains a powerful tale in Hollywood. Years later, another chapter of his life drew public attention due to his relationship with Noor Al-Fallah, which featured a significant age gap. Despite their romance seemingly thriving and welcoming a son in June 2023, their relationship ended by October 2024, though they remained connected for their child's sake and ongoing public interest. Al-Fallah's history of dating wealthy, older men like Mick Jagger and Clint Eastwood fueled speculation that she might be using Al Pacino for financial gain. Friends worried she was more interested in his wealth than in him as a person, especially given that court records showed Pacino was ordered to pay $30,000 per month in child support, along with a $110,000 upfront payment and additional expenses for their son. Post-breakup, Al-Fallah continued to live lavishly, seen with other high-profile men such as comedian Bill Maher, which left Pacino feeling hurt. Yet he remained financially supportive, showing little intention of cutting her off. Some described Pacino as hopelessly enamored, speculating he might leave her a significant part of his fortune. Whether he was being taken advantage of or simply supporting his child's mother remains ambiguous. Despite his rocky romantic life, Pacino continued to be a headline maker, illuminating discussions about power dynamics and relationships in the public eye. Even in his 80s, he remained a captivating